is Ashes, and I welcome you all to the channel. Today we are playing Arks of Heavily Evolved, and this is another ASMR. So in this video we're going to be doing some more reading, and while we do that we're going to be having a walk around my base here. So this is pre-recorded. I'm going to be showing you around the base, getting some nice views while we read. So I'll give you a quick tour first. This is the balcony of my house. Now this is PvE, so there's no worries about raids. It's PvE, so we're safe. Got a fireplace there. Got a little display there with a raptor. So we'll head down here. Storage room. Bookshelf there. We've got another display there with a Dilophosaurus. In here we've got our workroom. So we've got a forge, smithy, fabricator, mortar and pestle, all things needed to make complicated items, tools. So this is our view that we have. That's my house. Nice little house, I think. It's not the best, but I like it. So this is a greenhouse. I've not finished building it yet, as you can tell. I've not got all the materials yet to do it all, but we will have shortly. That's a trap for taming dinosaurs. So this here is my dino pen, where I keep the dinos. So we got some dinos in here, and this here is where we store some dinos, creatures in little cryopods like Pokeballs. We did have more dinos in the pen, but now they're in here, and cleared up some space. So again, this is PvE, so players are not going to raid or kill any of our dinos. Oh great, it started raining, of course. Just when I start to do a video. Okay, so we're going to get a good view here, and I'm going to start opening my book, Far Cry Absolution. We're going to finish the chapter off today, so I'm going to open my book now, take the cover off. Okay. So we're going to continue from where we left off last time. So let's begin. Your parts of us will, but when you, or John, or a father, or even I look at the same thing, it does not mean we see the same thing. They walked the field. The blood could still be seen in the grass where the cow had died, where the bear had come and eaten its fill and then moved on again. Every one of us has our purpose. You have lived out there, and you have served the purposes of the church, and they are grateful for it. And the Kershaws, well asked, still thinking of the empty rooms and what had been said to him. The answer Lonnie had given, that was not the answer. They served their purpose too, just as you do, or I do, each of us are servants. And your purpose, well asked. He knelt now, looking out across the field, retracing the steps of the bear, seeing it in his mind, the big loping slide and pull of its muzzle as it ran, the sheen of its fur seen beneath the light of the sun, and the way the dust of the pasture and earth beneath its great claws would have risen, kicked into the air. I make sure the Father and the Church receive their due. Is that what they are calling it now? We are a community, as you know well enough. If the Church helped you, you are expected to pay that kindness back. And the curfews paid until they could not anymore. And now they have been repurposed. Well, rose and walked toward the fence had been bent. He could see in the packed dirt and the close-cropped grass the indents and scuffle of the bear's movements. Were the curfews here when this happened? They were, but they were already at their end. They had already slaughtered many of their cows to feed the church, and their time here and their hold on this place was coming to an end. Will looked now to the surrounding wood. He thought of all he'd seen. He thought of the bear out there. He wondered if it was there still, if it watched them even now. I saw the Father last night, Will said. I saw John. I saw the baptism in the river. It's not just the Kershaws that owe a debt to the church. Many in this community have been helped. They have had their mortgages paid. They have had their debts forgiven. They have suckled at the teat of Eden's gates, Lonnie said. A wicked smile and now breaking from his lips. And the church and the Father only ask their due, whether that is the slaughter of a cow or the growing of a crop, or their giving of their soul to Eden's gates. Some did not give their soul as freely as the others. Loney laughed. Some gave more freely than others, but in the end, they all will give. Will thought of the girl's room. He thought about the past. He thought about how one drink led to another. He thought of another life altogether. Finally, he said, in the church there is salvation. You're getting in now, Lonnie said, and here I was starting to think you'd forgotten. The bear pits had been dug at the edge of the wood, the roots cleanly cut, and a thatch of thin pine had been woven to cover it all. At the bottom of the pits, thick, straight branches had been sharpened and then dug into the ground with their points toward the sky. Will looked it over, and then, when he was satisfied, he brought the beavers out from the house, and using a knife, he cut away the string he'd used to tie off the caster gland. slightly, then his eyes raised on Will. Sweet, almost like Christmas cookies. It's vanilla, Will said. There's a gland here that smells and even tastes just like vanilla. The old-time trappers used to sell it. Sometimes they still do. Read the label on the box of cookies next time you're at the store. I believe they list this stuff as natural flavouring. You're fucking with me. I wish I was. And bears like this stuff. They love this stuff. Will tied the other end of the wire to a tree on the opposite side of the pit and pulled the wire tight, suspending the beavers up over the centre of the pit. Like a fly to shit, or a bear to a beaver arse, Lonnie said. For an hour after they had finished, they sat at the edge of the porch on dining room chairs they dragged from inside. Lonnie smoked. He picked loose tobacco from his teeth and from his lips and flicked it away. He leaned forward with his forearms resting across his thighs, the cigarette dangling from his fingers. Mostly he watched the edge of the wood where the pit had been dug. He ran his eyes to the far mountains, and at times he held out a hand and called for the rifle, putting the scope to his eyes and searching through the deep shadows of the forest, or raising the barrel on the mountains so far away. You think he's out there? Lonnie asked, handing the rifle back to Will. He's out there, Will answered. The forestock was warm where Lonnie had held it. Will put the scope to his eye and looked for the glass, then brought the rifle back down again. What makes you so confident? He has to be somewhere, doesn't he? Lonnie shook his head. I don't know how you can do this every day. Just sit here like this and waiting for something to chance out from between the trees, he said, standing now. I found a few liquor bottles the Kershaws had tucked away. You want any to pass the time? You ever wonder what would happen if John or the father came along and found you breaking their rules? We all have our secrets, Lonnie said. Every one of us. Will waited. He watched Lonnie take drink after drink and then watched the man curl up on the couch, mumbling to himself with the bottle still in hand. Within 5 minutes there was a sound of his snoring. Out in the field the light had started to go and the insects danced in the air, a few zigzagging in the last of the nights, while others zoomed past like they had somewhere more important to be. He watched them for a time, and he watched the place in the woods where the pit was. Then he turned from the window and walked down the hall to his first bedroom. He sat on the bed and looked about this place. A woman's nightgown hung by a hook close to the door, the material thin and white, the sleeves very short, and an intricate stitching to the edges of each that ran out and down and across at the chest. For a while his eyes over the place and took in the twin dresses and the mirror across from the room. A single chair sat in a corner with a laundry basket on it, filled almost all the way to the brim with clothes that looked to be both female and male. When his eyes came back around on the nightgown, he did not know that he would do it until he did. He rose from his seat on the bed and took down the nightgown and held it in his hands. His wife had one like this once, and though he had trained himself not to think about her or his daughter, he thought of them now. He brought the nightgown close to his face. He smelled lavender and dirt and something he thought maybe was sun cream. He held the gown away from him now, and he went to the bed and laid in it the place he thought that it went. Then he rounded the bed and sat for a while, telling himself this was all craziness, that if John or the father walked in right now, they would know he had not been saved, and he had said he was in that long ago time, and that what had troubled him then still troubled him now, and no salvation by church or the father could give him respite. When he woke in the morning, the gown lay on the bed beside him. He reached out a hand and toward it, and it felt of the material, and for a moment wished there to be flesh and blood there beside him. He thought of the woman who had been his wife, and he thought of the life that had been his own. He closed his eyes, and that's when he heard of the soft barking of what could have been a dog pup, but what Will knew was a bear. Lonnie was still asleep on the settee, the bottle fallen from his hand when Will came out of the room. The rifle was still where Will had laid it after coming in off the porch. He took it now, raised it on the pit at the edge of the forest, and looked through the scope. One beaver was missing from the wire, and the thatch that covered the trap had been sprung. Quickly he took the rifle from his shoulder, fingered back the bolts until he could see the bullet in the chamber. He slid the bolts back into place, pushed the safety forward, and now he looked about the room for his pack and the ammo he knew was within. when he found the pack and had pulled it on over his shoulders, he went out onto the porch into the morning light. Again he put the scope on the pit trap and ran his eye along the edge of the forest. Everything was as it had been before, except for the one beaver and the lattice work covering that had hid the spikes below. When the barking came again to his ear, he knew they had caught what was not the big boar grizzly he had seen in the rain. No, this was not that. He came down up the porch, and, as quick and silent as he could, he crossed through the field and came to the place the pit had been dug and looked down. The bear was a female grizzly, and Will knew now why the big boar had not come down from the mountains. spikes seen in places where they had punctured her body and come up through her skin. The sharp whites of the wood now tinged red with her blood. Well Cross now, moving around one side of the pit's trap. There in the dirt at his feet was an imprint of the mother's paw. Close by, almost erasing that of its mother, the cub's prints could be seen where it had moved back and forth along the edge of the pit, calling for its mother and waking Will from his sleep. By the size of the paw print, he could see the cub was no more than a few months old, and that as he followed one print after another, it had moved up and away from the field, the path moving in a somewhat direct line toward the roadway above. He took several steps this way and then turned back to the trap. Two beavers still hung by the wire. He reached and undid one end of the wire and brought the two carcasses down. With the beavers in hand, he went back to the small paw prints he'd found and went up the hill in a careful study of the surrounding landscape, watching for movement, listening for sound. His movements were slow and deliberate. His watchfulness had less to do with startling the cub and more to do with that cub might have already drawn from the forest. For Will knew it was not just him that was hunting this cub, but likely the larger bull grizzly. When he came to the road and he could see where the small cub had run across the gravel, and Will marked the front paws and then looked for the broad back paws of each foot and the way they had pushed and swept at the gravel. He crossed, looking at each paw print, then went down into the forest at the other side of the road and continued, following the prints, sometimes losing them, sometimes taking his direction from a broken twig or tuft of hair found caught on the rough bark of a pine. He was 2 hours in his tracking, and by the time he came to the thickest of elderberry, the sun had risen high in the sky, and the forest had begun to steam from the heat. Will stopped. He had carried the rifle in his hand for the eternity of his search. Now he set it aside and knelt, looking down on the fresh paw prints the cub had left in the mud. The whole of the thickest seeming to follow the low depression of the waterway Will could not yet see. As first testing the meat, then pulling it back within the thickets. Placing one paw atop the carcass to hold it in place as it began to tear at the flesh, all the while keeping an eye on Will where he squatted. When the cub had chewed the beaver to the white bone, Will reached again and found the second beaver, this time using his knife to quarter it. He threw one piece close to the bear, then a second, a little more than a foot from the thicket. When the bear cub had finished the first quarter of it, Will watched it come forward, moving low to the ground to gather the second quarter of meat, and then lay eating it, still watching Will. "You are hungry," Will said, his voice no more than a whisper. The bear turned toward him when its ears cocked and focused in his direction. He held out another quarter and waited, not putting the beaver meat down on the ground, but instead holding it outward in his hand, the way one might try to steady the nerves of a long-lost dog that had found its way to the wild. When the bear cub came forward and nipped at the meat, Will did not let go, forcing the bear to inch closer. The cub had a good 100 pounds and possibly more, already showing much of the muscle of an adult grizzly, and the claws that curved and dug up the earth almost like teeth. By the time it had worked up enough confidence to grab the meat from Will's hand, Will had already begun to wonder how far the cub would be willing to follow him. There was little but ash and a few blackened pieces of wood remaining in the place of the fire. Will looked to the river, then back down to where the slight breeze of the water turned the ash over and over again, running it now in a dusting across the land. He walked to the river's edge and saw in the river mud where the worshippers had stood. Scanning across the water, he tried to find a place on the high rock facing where he had stood watching, but there were many places and many shadows. He turned away from the river and went up again along the wash to where the fire had burned. The bear cub was there, boring at a half-burnt piece of wood. When he approached, the bear cub shied away, then came back little by little. A couple hours had passed, and Will often lost the cub, but waiting soon would see the small bear looming through fields, or waving between the trunks of the pine forest at a distance no less than 100 feet away. At the height of his climb up out of the depression where the church had held their bonfire, he found he was disappointed not to see the bear climbing up behind him. But when he walked back 100 feet, he could see the bear running at the side of the river, playing in the shallow water, pausing to drink, and then running again. He called to the bear, and soon the bear had come up out of the river. Okay, folks, we're gonna have to end the video here. I was planning to finish the chapter off. I have literally 2 pages left. Sorry, 3 pages pretty much, but the editor is not letting me split the clips up to make the video longer, so there's nothing I can do here. I need to end it here and make a new video. You may also notice I've changed games. That's because of the same problem. I couldn't edit the clips to make them longer, so I had to just delete a couple and add another clip of a previous ASMR I did. This is Red Dead Redemption 2, by the way. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Sorry I couldn't finish the chapter off. I was planning to. It's really annoyed me, but anyway, the next video is not going to be that long, but I will do something in it as well as the reading to make it a decent length. But anyway, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Until next time, take it easy, and I will see you all in the next one. Happy New Year, by the way.